Rod, thank you so much for joining us for this APO show, and welcome to the APO family.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
So, not a lot of orchestra shows have a DJ involved. Can you tell us how you got involved in being a DJ?
I have absolutely no idea. I'm a big fan of a lot of the artists that are involved with this event, and I guess I'm known as a slightly bizarre, ridiculous DJ that likes a theme. It's just amazing to be here, part of something uplifting for a very wild year.
So I know that I have a lot of crazy memories growing up as a kid. Special gifts I wanted, silly things my parents did. Is there anything that comes to mind from when you were a kid that really was your favorite holiday memory?
Well, I grew up in probably the equivalent of Wales's like Twin Peaks, if you've ever watched that David Lynch's show. I grew up in an old coal mining valley, so I used to spend a lot of time riding my bicycle around like an old coal mine. That was what I did.
So what you're telling all of us is you're a coal miner's daughter, is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect.
I was the only gay in the village, was the only gay in the valley, and I rode my bike very weirdly around an old coal mine. So it's a bit of an odd childhood picture, but welcome to my life.
Well, just like Santa, you had soot on yourself. So there we go.
I did, yes.
So you're creating a holiday playlist for someone. What's the song that's got to be on there?
For a holiday playlist, like a traditional one, I would put Christmas Baby Please Come Home, and there are so many versions of that you can choose. I would go for like Darlene Love or Mariah Carey as a modern twist, and I would usually put something which is within the realms of reality, but a little bit far-stretched. So I like to put Ace of Base, All That She Wants, to kind of palm that off as like somebody wishing for another present. Just like a curveball,
Oh yeah, you've got to.
Yeah, let somebody think outside the box.
Something that's near and dear to APO's heart is building community and bringing people together. And I know that you as a performer like to do that. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I love with the shows that I do as a recording artist that the audiences are really diverse. It's been really nice to tie in the touring that I do with like local outreach. So I usually partner with a local queer charity or a local humanitarian charity and do some fundraising, which has brought some really unusual people to the shows that maybe wouldn't have heard about the music otherwise, which has been really cool. And as a DJ, I run the ridiculously titled Romy Michelle Saturday Afternoon Tea Dance every Saturday in New York up until quarantine. And I wanted to use a DJ set as a way to build community. So in the movie, they say they created Post-it notes, invented Post-it notes. So I let people make requests on Post-its, and there's a request wall. And it was kind of like a covert way to get people to chat with strangers. So I see people putting up requests and somebody else is writing one and they'll be like, oh, I didn't know that song, or oh, I love that song. And I see people make friends and kind of get to know each other week by week. And I have seen people, make friends online, and like actors start working with each other from doing that. So it's been a nice way to use music to introduce people to each other. And that's like a very simple way to build community without the next step. So that's what I try to do, like small seedlings that I let people grow themselves.
So in this show, we're featuring you as a DJ, but I know that you're an incredible solo artist, and you just came out recently with a new album. What's that album like?
It's very gay. It was called the Gayest Album of the Decade by an Australian publication, which was amazing. I used this album as a love letter to the LGBTQ plus community. So over the last couple of years, all of the political turmoil made me want to do something more than just music with the record. So I wanted it to highlight and amplify voices in the queer community. So there's 12 queer guests on it, everyone from like Justin Vivian Bond to Andy Bell from Erasure, Jake Shears, and the Illustrious Blacks in New York. And I wanted it to weave in queer history with dance songs to sort of show how queer people have stood up against prejudice throughout the years. So it's like referencing people like Sylvester, Jimmy Somerville, and Erasure, and how that like resilience is fed into queer music. So it's very, very, very gay. It's not exclusively for the gays, but if you know, you know.
So you grew up in Wales, and there are probably a lot of kids just like you back in Wales that are nervous to come out, that are nervous to be who they really are. What advice do you have for them?
Well, I would say that wherever you grow up, particularly growing up in Wales, there's not a lot of diversity of people around you. You know, it's very white where I grew up, very traditional. So it's important to try and do like whatever travel you can. Obviously very difficult this year, but to sort of seek out things that you don't have in your life. I turned to TV, film and radio to see people who are like me, and eventually found people through a local drama group, which is, you know, the cliche. But to remember that you're not alone, especially in the age of technology. You can reach out online, and even if you're not physically close to people, you can see people more like you, and over time, you'll have more of those around you in your life. So to just stay strong and not be afraid of coming out, which is probably not going to be pleasant to begin with, especially, you know, in parts of Wales, but eventually will be something that you can put behind you and move on forward from and be happy with yourself.
So a little bird told me that you have a connection to Elton John. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I'm very good friends with Elton. He's an amazing man. He took me on tour with him. So years ago, he discovered my music. He's very keen as a music treasure hunter, so he pays attention to new people. He discovered my music and sang on a song on my second album and took me around the world. I played 57 shows opening for him, everywhere from like West Coast America to Russia. And we just stayed really good friends. We used to go like record shopping for each other on tour. Like he'd be in a store and email me, be like, do you have the Phil Spector Christmas album? And I'd ask him what George Michael records he didn't have. And he's been an amazing inspiration, both as like the most hilarious man I've ever met, and as one of the most inspiring musicians I've met, who like uses his platform for philanthropy and amplifying voices in the community, especially independent and queer voices. And he's just amazing. Like you watch him on stage and see somebody twice my age almost still working harder than I do. And it reminds me to just like keep working. He's amazing, amazing man.
There's no disagreement that this has probably been one of the most difficult years for all of us. There's so many things that add to the chaos in our lives. Looking past that, which is difficult to do, what's something you hope for in the new year?
In the new year, I hope for a little bit of perspective. I feel like conversation has been sorely missed this year, and it's been people screaming at each other across a void. It's one thing, you know, like I was saying with the Post-it notes, I tried to get people talking to each other at my parties, at my shows, whatever, online. And I feel like people have not been listening to each other. And I really hope that in the new year, or even before that, people learn that talking at other people is never, ever going to get us anywhere in the world. And taking a breath and listening to the response is as important as delivering the information. Because if you don't understand the person you're talking to, there's no conversation. If there's no conversation, there's no movement. So my sincerest wish is that people learn to start talking to each other again, and with as much respect as you can possibly give for the person with an opposing view. Screaming at people makes no difference. Please, let's talk.
I think we can all agree on that. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy to have you in the APO family.
Thank you for having me.